Shalom Aleichem, sweetest friends. Siyata D'Shmai, we're continuing the previous shir, and this shir should be a schus l'refuah Savimur Tzakiyona ben Chana. We learned an interesting shaila in the previous shir about two people. Ruvain was a Rav in north of Eretz Yisrael, Shimon was his helper, and they used to go be Masadir Kedushin together, and they were Eidim together, and the Rav was usually Masadir Kedushin, Shimon was the Eid. And then they witnessed a stolen becher, and then afterwards they had an argument about how much in court the becher was worth. One of them said that Ruvain said it was only plated silver, wasn't real silver, it was worth 100. Shimon said that it was worth 300 because it was real silver. And now the shaila is not only how much to take from the Ganev, but also can they continue testifying together, these two? Because maybe one of them is considered a liar. We saw that Lefishita Satosfis, as long as it's something where they could make a mistake, then it's beseder. Then you take Yesh B'chal Masayim Maneh. When one of them said 200, Beis Hillel says that if one person says 200, the other person says 100, you could take 100 because people make a mistake on 100, and you don't assume that either of them are lying. But when it comes to, like the Gemara brings Yain v'Shemen, when one says Yain and the other one says Shemen, there's an argument about what was given as a pikadon. There's Mamash HaKchasha. There, it's two completely different things, and neither of them can be believed. So, according to Tosis that we saw in the previous shir, it depends on where you can make a mistake. If you can make a mistake, they're not considered Eidei Sheker. So one says 100, one says 200. They're really talking about the same thing. They just, one of them counted wrong. Seder. So you say it's at least 100, and they're acceptable witnesses. But if it's Yain and Shemen, it's two completely different things. There, you're not liable to make a mistake. However, the Tosis Rid learns differently. The Tosis Rid says that the argument is about this money. Whether or not you can compare the money to Yain and Shemen. Beis Shammai learn. They say that you can't believe them because even in Man and Masayim you can't believe them because that's like a Chashas Yain V'Shemen, because this is they're talking about the Iker Ha'inyan here. The Iker is the money. So you're not allowed to make a mistake in the Iker. You're assuming people pay attention to the Iker and they're going to get it right. So Nechleka Edusam, when it comes to Yain and Shemen, and also Nechleka Edusam 100 and 200, because that's the Iker Inyan. Whereas Beis Hillel learns that their Edus is Mitzdaref, because it's not like Yain and Shemen, because Yain is not completely different matter than Shemen. It's completely different material than Shemen is. And the Shemen guy is in Moda to the Yain guy, and the Yain guy is in Moda to the Shemen guy. So this is Mamash HaKchasha. But if one says 200, and the other one says 100, says Beis Hillel, they are being modeh the Iker Ha'inyan. Because what's the Iker Ha'inyan? The money. And they are both modeh that there's 100 here. When it's Yain and Shemen, it's considered a Hakchasha. You don't have to weigh them on anything. You have just one against the other. But when they agree about the 100, then you can accept that testimony. Why can you accept that testimony? Because 100 and 200 are in the same category. It's not whether a person is liable to make or not to make a mistake. Just, is it davar yachasi? Is it part of the other sum? According to Tosfos, Pshat is that a person is liable to make a mistake between 100 and 200. And since included in 200 is 100, so you have to weigh them on the 100. But it's not considered Eidus Mukheshes because a person is liable to make a mistake on the 100. And they're both agreeing on the 100, so you can accept it. But according to the Tosis Rid, the reason 200, one says 200, one says the other one says 100, you can believe them, it's because since they're both agreeing on the 100, because 100 is part of 200. It's not because a person's liable to make a mistake or not liable to make a mistake, just because the 100 they're both agreeing upon. In the case of Yain and Shemen, they're not agreeing on anything. In the case of 100 and 200, they're both agreeing on the 100. What would that mean then in our case? In our case, one says gold plated and one says silver plated, and the other one says silver. So, according to Tosfos, you can make a mistake between silver plated and silver. So therefore, both of their testimonies are accepted, and you take the lower sum. Yesh b'chal masayim maneh. But you can make a mistake between silver and silver coated, silver plated. So since you can make a mistake, and you have b'chal masayim maneh, so then take the lower sum. But Tosfos Rita holds, and so learns Rabbeinu Yonah and Sanhedrin, that the reason it's kosher 200 and 100, when one eighth is 200, the other eighth is 100, it's because there is a hatamah chelkit between the two sides. Included in the 200 is 100. But in our case, it could be that the edus is puzzle, because it's not a hatamah chelkit at all, because they have a complete argument. One says silver plated, it's a completely different type of becher. One says silver plated and one says silver. There's not a hatamah chelkit. And then the shaila will be, or you can argue, no, there is hatamah chelkit. They both say it was a becher. And then the shaila can be, well, what about other eduyos? Are they now allowed, now that we assume that they're lying, one of them, can they now testify together? This is a big problem because these two guys used to testify together. Sometimes when you have non-religious weddings, so you only have two kosher witnesses in the whole wedding. It came special. I remember I was once at a non-firm wedding of an old elementary school friend, and I went up to the Mesader Kiddushin, and I told him, my friend and I are here. We're both religious. We can be witnesses if you want. No, they had already taken care of that. They had two kosher witnesses. In any event, let's go further. The Gemara brings the Machlokas Amoraim legabe edim that were nifsa la'edus machmas hakchosha. Edim that contradicted each other. This is in Bava Basra and the Flamet Aleph Amid Beis. What happens when Edim contradicted each other? You have two groups of witnesses, and they contradicted each other. Can they now make Edim be made in other areas? Because mitzad echad, we don't know that they're actually lying. Why don't we know they're lying? Because we had two groups that contradicted each other. One group was lying, one group wasn't. And we don't know which group was the lying group, which group wasn't the lying group. On the other hand, there's a 50% chance that they're the lying group. So maybe we shouldn't accept them in the future. Safek shakronim. So this is a machlokas between Rav Huna and Rav Chisda. Rav Huna says that every group can come independently in the future and testify. In other words, because of the suffix, we're machshir the edim to be made in other instances, and therefore we do not take them out of their cheskes kashrus that they had before giving the edus. So they retain their cheskes kashrus because you don't know which one is unkosher. Rav Chisda argues, and he says that these edim can no longer testify. Why? Because how can you be motzi mammon al piyam? As the Gemara says, bahadei sa'adei shakri lamali. There's suffix psulim, and therefore you leave the money in its previous chazakah. You can't be motzi money with these edim who might be lying. The Rashbam in Dibor Maschel v'Zuba, so writes the Rambam, the Rif, Rashi, other Rishonim. They emphasize b'das Rav Huna that the hechsher edim is mikoach suffix. But if we're mitzaref eid echad mikol kas, if we take one aid from each group, so this new group will definitely be puzzle. Why? Because there's vadai one guy in this group who's an aid puzzle. If you have two groups that contradicted each other, and you know that one of them is lying, and then you take one from each group, so you know that one of the two is a liar. La halacha nifsak b'shulchan aruch, siman lamed aleph sif aleph, like Rav Huna, that every kas can be made b'fnei atzma, and also, like the Rishonim emphasize, b'chol poskim koloshen hashach, that eid echad mikas zu, ve'eid echad mikas zu, eina mitzdarfim leidus, like we said from the Rishonim, that they cannot be mitzdarif one aid from each kas. Rav Yisrael Noach Arnon, he has many svarim called Dape Iyun, which is notes from shiurim that he's given over the years, many shiurim, excellent sefer. There are many svarim, and so in his sefer, he also has a Pinas Musar, where he teaches you the Musar from the Lumdis. So look at this din of Rav Huna. So we have these Eidim who go out of the Beis Din, and they continue living their lives, and they continue testifying, and we kill Al PM, Kedushin, everything is good, everything's Geshmak. We listen to them, no shilas at all. And then one day, one guy goes together in a group with the other guy, and all of a sudden what happens? What happens is, this is Rega Haemes. Now we're not so sure anymore. We say, you can't combine, one of you is a liar. This is Rega HaBeirur. So sometimes in life, we reach that Rega HaBeirur, that moment where we meet the truth straight in the face, that we are revealed that maybe we weren't so kosher after all. Anyway, we don't believe two witnesses like the Rambam says because we know they're telling the truth. No, it's Xeris HaKasav. The Torah says to believe them. We don't know. But here they don't have it anymore. We can't assume they have a cheskes kashrus because one of them is definitely unkosher. I'll go back to our story. So now I want to get to, and Rabbi Arnon brings it, the suffix of the Chachmei Brisk. This was before Reb Chaim Brisker. This is the same Brisk, but many hundreds of years before. And this is mamish. There's such beautiful Torah about this. A lot of raid. The Shach in Siman Lamed Aleph brings the suffix of the Chachmei Brisk. What is the din of two Eidim that were makrish each other? In other words, one against one, and they were nifsal for this edus. Can they be mitzaref with each other for other eduyos? So the tzad hapashut is that a vada or apostle. They have one aid that's vadai shakrin. If you have one aid that's a vadai shakrin, how can you allow them to combine for testimony? The tzad ha'mechudish is that the eidim are kosher. Why? Because since to become apostle edus, you need two eidim against you. Here, you only have one aid against you. One aid against you doesn't pass you le'edus. And a chizik to the tzad ha'mechudish brings the shach from the fact that this din doesn't appear in the Gemara. Like Abei Shtei Hakashas Shtei Kitos Hamachisho Zu. We have a din of Erecha Mizeh Erecha Mizeh Mitzdarfim. Right? The Gemara says that the two witnesses, they can testify independently, but like the Rishonim say, Erecha Mizeh Erecha Mizeh Mitzdarfim. It's meduyik in the Gemara that the two witnesses, yes, can come together and testify later on, but not a kombina of one, they call them in Hebrew kombina, of one aid from this group and one aid from the other group. That's meduyik that it can't be done. But legabe hakchashas shnei eidim zeh zeh, we don't find that the Gemara or the Rishonim passel them for other ediyos. So it's mashma that be'emes they're not passel for other ediyos. It's mashma that for other testimonies there's only when two passel, not when one passels. And this would be mashlich. This would have ramifications for our question of these two people, this Rav Ruvain and this Reb Shimon, who had a machlokes about what type of Kiddush cup we were dealing with that was stolen. Can they get together in the future? Because if you assume that they're contradicting each other, and that one of them didn't make a mistake, but that one of them is a liar, now the shaila is, can they testify together in the future? On one hand, they were only passed by one person. It's only one. On the other hand, you have one guy saying one way, one guy saying the other way, one guy's a shakran. So how do you accept a shakran as a witness? The shach brings a raya against the chiddush of the Chachmei Brisk, who wanted to be mechadesh, that Eid Echad, Shehikrish Eid Echad is kosher, and he brings a raya, the Shach brings a raya that they're puzzle, that Eid Shehikrish Eid are puzzle, from a Ran in Ksubis. What's the raya? The raya is that the Gemara in Ksubis Nafchav Gimel Amid Aleph discusses two Eidim who are coming with respect to the Gerushin of a certain woman. One Eid says she was divorced. The other Eid says she wasn't divorced. And the Gemara concludes, since two Eidim are made that she was an Eishes Ish, and they're only arguing about whether or not she was divorced, there's only one Eid vis-a-vis the divorce aspect. Ein echad oimed b'makom shnayim. One Eid cannot be validated b'makom shnayim, because you have two witnesses who are essentially saying she was married, and only one is saying she's divorced. So one can't beat two. The Ran, Ksubis Daf Yud Midape Harif, analyzes the Gemara, and he says that we are accepting the fact that she's an Eishes Ish, even though our knowledge of her being an Eishes Ish is stemming from the Eidus of these two Eidim alone, and we have no other mucker. Frek the Ran, since these Eidim are contradicting each other, and one of them is a Shakran, we already learned the Machlekes of Rav Huna and Rav Chisda, like I two kitas of Eidim that are Machish Zu Zu. We paskin like Rav Huna that each kas can be made in other testimonies, but we also paskin what the Rishonim add, that an aid of one kas and an aid of the other kas are not mitzaref because one of them is a Shakran Vadai. So if so, how are we mitzaref these two Eidim together, that from these two Eidim, one of them is a Shakran, and we're makabel the Eidus that she's an Eishes Ish. We said there are two Eidim that she's an Eishes Ish. Frecked around two Eidim, she's an Eishes Ish. One of them is an Eid Sheker. So how are you makabel the Eidus of an Eid Sheker? And for the Ran, that the case of the Gemara is not talking about Echad Shakran, it's talking about Echad Toyeh. We're talking the Gemara that the two Eidim said that the husband threw the get to his wife, and the machlokas is where the get falls. Samachloi, she's not Megureshes, or Samachla, and she's Megureshes. In such an instance, that's not Bechrech a Sheker, but it could be a mistake in their assessment. We must reject their testimony in the present, meaning we can't say it's Karav Lo, we mamish don't know. We have to keep her B'chezkes Eishes Ish. But in the future, they're not nifsal, because the fact that she was originally a Megureshes, that we stick with. The fact that she was originally Mekudeshes, the fact that she was originally married, who says either of them is a liar about that? Neither of them are liars, they're both telling the truth. And they just made a mistake about whether it's Karav Lo or Karav Lo. But neither of them are liars, and since neither of them are liars, Memela, we can believe them both that she was originally married. Obazoi, Tain is the Shach, Muchach midivrei Aran, that if one of them is a Shakran and not a Toeh, the Eidim are puzzle to be mitzdaref to other Eduyos. If it's Muchach that one of them is a Shakran, then they cannot be mitzdaref in the future. Why? Because one of them is a Vadai Shakran. And this is Poshet the Safek of the Chachmei Brisk. Because the Chachmei Brisk asks, what's the din of Shneidim Shechishu Zu Zu? Can they be mitzdarif in the future? The answer is absolutely not. Because one of them is a Vadai Shakran. He was only Nistar Ayidei Dechad. You see from this Gemara that it doesn't matter. You see from this Ram that it doesn't matter. It's only because if it's one against one, it's only because one of them made a mistake that we accept their Eidus. But if one of them would be a Shakran, we wouldn't accept. We learned Derech Agav that you can have a psil of Eidim, you can disqualify Eidim Achmas Tos, and even if they're soser each other, they don't get disqualified in the future. So what would be the halacha in our case of the becher? Well, it depends. If you assume that they could make a mistake in this matter, which I think is a pretty good assumption to make, that they can make a mistake because you're dealing mamish with the same kiddush cup. Is it gold? Is it silver? Silver plated? That people make a mistake. So mele they can be mitzdarif in the future. In the Noda B'Yehudin Madura Kamen Even Ezer and Siman Mem Zayin, he writes that even lefi chachmei brisk that are machshir edus b'akoshes eid echad, they passel an edus that was said together with the edus in which they were contradicting each other. In other words, in the future, their edus is beseder. But if the very edus in which they were contradicted, there everything they say is going to be disqualified, even what they weren't contradicted about. Frek the erech shayin the Noda B'Yehuda, then what's the raya of the shach? What was the shach's raya? That there was an edus gerushin together with the edus kedushin. So the shach's raya was that you accept the edus kedushin, right? You just don't accept the edus gerushin because there was a toast, but the edus kedushin you accept. But according to the Noda B'Yehuda, that's not true, because he says if the edus that was together with the edus that was mukhash, that was contradicted, you don't accept. But that's exactly our case. That together with the edus mukhashes, there was an edus that's emes. In other words, it's the mukhashes was the gerushin part, the kedushin part they're agreeing upon, and you believe them on the kedushin part, even though it was set together with the gerushin part where you don't believe them. It's a very shver Noda B'Yehuda. The Gra in the Bir HaGra in Siman Lamed Aleph, and so writes the Sivis there, the Tumim there, the Chavas Yair in Siman Kufnan Tes, the Shvus Yankiv in Chelik Aleph Siman Ayin Tes. They don't understand the suffix of the Chachmei Brisk, and they don't even understand the Shach bring rayas from Iran. We even open Gemara. Against the Chachmei Brisk, that the edus is cancelled. The Gemara in Maseches Shavuos, Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph, discusses a case of Eidim on Molar HaLevana, when they saw the new moon. How much of a discrepancy may there be in the place of the Levana in the sky between the Eidim in order for us to accept or reject their testimony? The Gemara says that if one of the Eidim said that he saw the moon 2 mirdaot me'al ha'ofek, 2 like a horse, the thing you put on the horse to ride on the horse, above the ofek, called a mirdas. And the other one said, no, it was 3. So this is a reasonable discrepancy, and we're makabel the reitus on Molat HaLevana. But if one said 3, and the other one said 5, that already is it's going too far. And we're doicha the reitus. And the Gemara says that yes, we're doicha the Eidim, but they could be mitzdarif in the future with other people for Eidus. And the Gemara says, what does that mean? What are they mitzdarif with other people for Eidus? Is that Eidus mamon? And if so, it's a kasha on Rav Chizda. Because what did Rav Chizda say? Rav Chizda said that if they're 2 against 2, in the future they're cancelled out. In the future they're disqualified because one of the kitos, one of the groups, was shakranim. So here also, since one of them is a mishaker, how is he mitzdarif in the future with somebody else? So it's a kasha on Rav Chizda. that they can be mitzvah with somebody else. You wanted to passel both groups from testifying in the future. The Gemara says, no. Amar Rava says a teretz. What does Eidus Acheres mean of that Rosh Chodesh? That now somebody else comes, they're mitzdaref. If somebody else agrees with one of them, then he can be mitzdaref to that guy, and now it's 2 against 1, and Shalom al Yisrael. So the Gemara says that you see from this Gemara that there's no difference in the Gemara's eyes between if there are 2 witnesses against the Shakran or only 1 witness against the Shakran. Because the Gemara made a tushtel. The Gemara made a comparison. The case of Trei U'Trei. You have a case of Trei U'Trei, 2 against 2. And as a raya for the 2 against 2 case, what case did we bring? The 1 against 1 case. So we brought the 1 against 1 as a raya for the 2 against 2. So that means you can compare 1 against 1 to 2 against 2. And if you compare 1 against 1 to 2 against 2, so what does that mean? That means that just like in 2 against 2, if one person from each group wants to be mitzdarif with another person, we don't allow one person from each group is mitzdarif with each other. We disqualify them because you have a vadai shakrin. So here also 1 against 1, we're going to disqualify them because we're going to disqualify both of them in the future from any edus because one of them is a vadai shakrin. So since one of them is a vadai shakrin, we're now going to be mitzdarif, and we're now going to passel them, according to Rav Huna, in the future from being mitzdarif together, not with someone else. So, if you have 2 against 2, so now each group is independently kosher. They're 2. But we compare 2 against 2 to 1 against 1. And what do we say about 1 against 1? We said that it has the same din as 2 against 2. So, in 2 against 2, what do we see? We saw that Rav Huna holds, even Rav Huna, we hold like Rav Huna, that if there's a vadai shakrin, we don't accept their testimony. So that means that if you have 1 against 1, these 2 guys can't team up in the future because you have a vadai shakrin. So etzem zeh that the Gemara compared the 2 against 2 to 1 against 1. So that means that they are comparable, not like the Chiddush of the Chachmei Brisk, that one guy can't passel another guy, and they both remain b'cheskes kashrus. No, you see that they can, and therefore the Gemara brought a raya from 1 against 1 to 2 against 2. So the Gemara here is bringing a raya against Rav Chizda. Because Rav Chizda, you wanted to say that if you have 2 groups, each of them are passel in the future. Misafek, because you know one of them is lying, so we passel both groups in the future, misafek. So how come if it's 1 against 1, we don't passel both of them in the future, misafek? But just using this logical construct of comparing 1 against 1 to 2 against 2, that would mean that just like Rav Huna holds that if you have 2 against 2, one of them is a vadai shakrin, so you cannot combine one from each group. So to 1 against 1, since you have a vadai shakrin, you cannot compare. They cannot combine together in the future to be Eidim. So if you hold, back in our case of the Becher, and this is a big if, but if you hold that they're not liable to make a mistake here, and that one of them is definitely lying, that in the future they cannot combine together to be witnesses, because then you have one of them who's definitely lying. One of them is a shakran. So how do you accept his testimony? So this sugya continues, and B'ritzos Hashem Darkeinu, I hope that in a future shir we will be able to continue discussing this, and very, very interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of terutzim. If you look in the back of the Mesifta, on Maseches Shuas, there he lists in the Yalkut Biurim about 4 or 5 different terutzim to the Kasha and the Chachmei Brisk from this Gemara. And we will, I hope, continue learning this sugya. It's mamish a fascinating sugya. We should be zocha lilmod ulam edlishma v'las v'l'kaim b'skol divrei salmut torah b'ahava. Amen v'amen. Shalom, shalom, sweetest and most beloved friends.